Hello and welcome to everyone. Today our guest is Meaghan Penning. It's always a pleasure to have a female MMA fighter as your guest. What can you say in general, in short lines, about yourself, and we will proceed with the questions. Please go for it, Meaghan.
Hi, so I'm Meaghan Penning. I recently made my pro debut with Invicta FC, and I won. I guess that's the important part. That was in November, and I train in the southwest area of the United States, and yeah, that's me, I guess.
When did you start training MMA? Which was your first martial art?
So jiu-jitsu was my first martial art, and I started training maybe 5 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago. Within maybe 6 months of that, I was like super hooked, started competing a lot, started training a lot more, and realized like I kind of wanted to get more, after about a year of training jiu-jitsu and competing in that circuit as a white belt and one sec, this is clicking on my phone, or on my car. After training as a white belt and shortly after I got my blue belt, I decided I wanted a little bit more of a test in how my jiu-jitsu stood up in a self-defense situation. So initially getting into MMA was just something that I wanted to do as a way of personal growth, kind of for competition, but also to see where I stood with my self-defense skills. And then I booked an MMA fight and then ended up getting injured leading into it, so couldn't do that one. And in the time off, I realized how much I really love the sport, so I figured why not turn it into a career and spend all my time doing this if this is what I love to do.
Do you have a nickname?
Do I have a nickname?
Yeah.
So I've been given the Asian frustration, which I've turned into #AF, which also stands for as F. So on t-shirts and things, I've kind of had this branding idea to do like hashtag, savage AF, hashtag hot AF, hashtag, all these different kinds of words around that and branding around that hashtag because it's such a popular one already. But it also stands for Asian frustration. So it's like a dual meaning thing.
How would you describe your own fighting style in your own words?
So for me, my goal, so I started in jiu-jitsu and then I, got more into the MMA aspect where I moved to Albuquerque, trained boxing and wrestling at Fit and HB with Tom and Arlene Vaughn and John Judy. And so they're much more cohesive MMA. So everything blended together in the right way, basics done correctly. When you mix it up can be really hard to counter and to deal with. And so for me, that kind of has developed and morphed my style into something where I like the thinking aspect. I like the fight IQ aspect. I like the idea of outsmarting your opponent and putting them wherever they don't want to be. And that's what my coach in Albuquerque, Tom Vaughn, really kind of preaches and works the best on. And I've been working with him the past 2 years. So that's kind of my style that I've been developing into and looking for lately.
Do you have a favorite submission considering the fact you come from BJJ?
It's funny, I just made a post on this the other day. In MMA, I much prefer to just be on top, stay on top, and keep, delving out punishment or giving out punishment from top position. So I like a lot of strikes from top position. And so submissions it's not something that I'm as interested in looking for in an MMA fight anymore. But I always liked anaconda chokes when I was in the jiu-jitsu circuit. I don't know that I ever pulled one off in competition. I think, what did I do a lot of in competition circuit that I'd finish with? I really like the Kesa Katami leg submissions where you use your leg to Americana or your leg to armbar. I like a lot of stuff from north-south, but more transitionally. That's just like my favorite position. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm submission focused in MMA anymore, but I do still like that aspect. I like learning new submissions. It's just not my favorite style in a fight.
Do you have a favorite strike then?
Yeah, I'd have to go with elbows from top of mount. That's probably what I like to look for the most.
What can you say about your first amateur fight? That's question one. Question two, who was the hardest amateur opponent for you?
So my first amateur fight, the girl missed weight by like 8 pounds. but she showed up, so that was good. I still took the fight. I'd sold something like $8,000 worth of tickets. It was super awesome. I had all of my friends, family, everyone there to support me. It was over in the first round. She didn't really have much in terms of strikes or grappling. She was also very new to the sport, and so it was pretty, like, the actual feeling though of being in there, standing up, starting in the octagon. I did not remember, like, I wouldn't remember after the fight any of the stand-up portion until I had maybe 5 amateur fights. And then I started to remember more and more of each fight. In my pro debut, I remember almost the entire thing following. And I think that's like a nerves thing. That's like your brain's like, it's just such a new thing to fight another individual. I never had a background in martial arts before I started 4 to 5 years ago. So I wasn't used to that feeling, that like adrenaline rush. So that took a little while to get used to. My hardest amateur fight was, I mean, of course, my loss. So, I mean, I went 5-1 as an amateur, and my one loss was to Hannah Scoggins in her hometown, or not hometown, but where she lived, where she was from. I can never get it straight if it's North Carolina or South Carolina, Greenville, but in that part of the U.S. I flew out there with the full intention, of course, of winning that fight. I was following the game plan, everything that we'd practiced, and then it gets to the ground, and she'd rocked me on the feet in a way that I'd never. She had very precise striking with like a kind of a karate background, and she landed a good straight to my nose, and it was the first time I'd ever broken my nose in a fight. And when it went to the ground, I've heard this saying before, like, if you hit a black belt once, he becomes a brown belt. If you hit a brown belt once, then he's a purple. Hit him again, he's a blue. And a black belt can end up looking like a white belt on the ground if you just rock him enough. And I really felt that, like, I got to the ground and I was doing all the wrong things, and I was like habitual. Like, it puts you back a step when you get rocked and you're scared. And so, but it was the best fight for me because I really learned and grew from that experience. And a year and 2 months later, when I made my pro debut, the same thing happened where I got hit. I got rocked hard in the first round. My nose was bleeding. I'm not used to having nosebleeds. My nose doesn't bleed easily. I have like a very Asian bridge, small nose. So like it doesn't break very often it's never broken in practice or anything like that. So it spooked me a little bit, and I remembered having the thought of, like, we've been here before, we know what to expect now, and we still have to figure out a way to pull off the win. And so the first round I lost in my pro debut, and I came back and I won the next 2 rounds, and I'm really happy with the performance and the result. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had that loss and that difficult fight against Hannah.
What are your plans for the future?
So I haven't heard anything from my promotion Invicta lately. I'm sure that's just a COVID related thing, and once things start opening up, we'll get to start doing stuff again. So it's kind of just that waiting period while the vaccinations get going and everything else. It was great that they were putting on as many fights as they were able to last year, considering there are no audiences, but I'm sure that takes a toll at some point. So I'm leaving things very open. I'm also here in Phoenix right now with my cousins and training at the lab here, and I'm enjoying that too. So I'm kind of just like taking this time to just train and get better and work on the things I need to work on. And I am focusing right now a lot on my Instagram presence. I do have plans to release a musical concert series. I recently kind of got back into music. That's something I did before fighting, and I realized it's such a good outlet to have. Like, fighting is very similar. Like, they're both very emotionally expressive things to do, fighting, music. But with music, it's a different pursuit. It's a different art. And I think it can be really healthy to balance, the aggression and the intensity of fighting with something like music, which can be very calming and very releasing. So I'm going to, on my Instagram, for Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April, I'm going to do a fundraiser for New Mexico Rape Crisis Center. And I'm going to talk a lot about my core beliefs, the things that are important to me in terms of women and sexuality and being in the sport of MMA, which is such a tough sport, and not needing to feel like you have to be tough or a certain way. Like, you can be a woman and still be great at MMA and still be tough and all of these things. So that's kind of my next business moving forward. But in terms of MMA, I'm just trying to get better and taking it one day at a time.
Do you have a favorite quote?
A favorite quote. Huh. I'd have to think a little more on that one. Maybe I'll send you one after. I have a lot of favorite quotes. I really like Oscar Wilde. He's perhaps my favorite author. And I really like 48 Laws of Power in terms of like learning how to deal with difficult and sometimes negative people. I like it from that, reading it from that perspective, not necessarily trying to manipulate others, but understanding when others are manipulating you and like how to counter that. So those are probably my two favorite readings. Like Oscar Wilde quotes are oftentimes my favorite. I do like Breakfast at Tiffany's. That's like my favorite movie of all time. And in there she talks about having a case of the reds, which is different than having a case of the blues. It's not when you're sad, it's when you're scared and you don't know what for. And I really like that quote from that movie too. So there's definitely a bunch that I could throw out there, but those are some of my influences and the things that I spend the most time reading.
Would you like to add something to the interview or to give a shout out to someone, considering you said 10-15 minutes? We're running out of time, so.
I appreciate you so much. This has been a really fun interview. So shout out to you. Thank you for inviting me on the show. But I'd really like to thank all of my followers who have been supporting my Instagram page lately. You guys are awesome. It allows me to do what I love. It allows me to focus fully on training and bringing value in the ways that I can do best. And I hope to, at some point very soon, put out some things to help you guys in return. It's going to be some fitness, some mental, some brain-related products for people that train a lot and are getting their brain hit. And so that's my goal now, is to kind of give value back to you guys. But I do want to shout out all of my followers who have been supporting the page. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I will upload it in like 2-3 hours. I will start creating video and I will send you one, okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vladimir.
All right. Thank you, Meaghan. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.